Christian, welcome to the Human Innovation Podcast, the Heitland Show. Awesome to have you and awesome to have a fellow German. Yeah, so really looking forward to have an awesome conversation with you. For everyone that is joining us live, if you have questions around the topic of recruitment, Christian is the expert in the German-speaking and most probably as well global market when it comes to recruitment. And we dive, of course, into recruitment. But before we look into recruitment, Christian, tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you get to where you are today?
That's a long story. Jens, thank you very much for having me. Let me start with a very small correction at the very beginning, and you know what's coming, right? I'm only German on a second level. Firstly, I'm Bavarian, and that basically also explains a lot what I've done, why I've done things, and where I come from. To start from the very beginning, I grew up in a pretty small village with roughly 800 inhabitants, close to the Alps between Rosenheim and Salzburg. I had a very nice childhood there, a lot of outside activities. Back then, that was basically the norm. No mobile phones, no internet, nothing. And somehow I always was a bit different. Maybe I felt different, I behaved different, I wore different clothes. As soon as I had glasses, I never had those standard glasses, but some fancy stuff, at least as soon as I could pick the frames myself. And that kind of defines my complete life, so to say. When I went to high school, firstly, I did not want to go to the same school as my brother did. That was the first reason to pick a specific high school. And then I decided for a school that was offering Latin as first language, then English, and then ancient Greek as third language.
Like everyone would do.
Like everyone would do on the countryside in Bavaria. Yes, why not? The class was rather small, specifically then when we moved into the Greek episode. And as soon as I decided on Greek, my parents knew there is no way we can persuade Christian to do anything we want him to do, and they stopped nagging. Literally, it was then the time where they said, well, come on, do whatever you want. Whatever we say, you won't take it into consideration anyway. Well, partially I did. So I did not take complete own decisions, but the path was set from what I wanted to do. And then, well, normal high school, university, starting to work and different aspects on that, and then at a certain point in time I met you. That's also 1.5 years ago, and here we are. That's the short story. The not so short story is my studies, and I know I'm kind of answering a question that has not yet been asked. But having had Latin and ancient Greek in school, there is only one area that would be interesting for me in terms of studies. So I decided for Egyptology. Again, my parents, I could see their shock. It was really shocking. What the hell is he doing again? But they didn't argue at all. They said, well, he knows what he's doing. And I really studied Egyptology in Munich, mainly because I wanted to stay at university. So the classical career, doing your master's, PhD, and then become a professor. That was my idea when I started studying Egyptology. well, it never happened that way, but the studies themselves were super interesting. Not only because I learned 1, 2, 3, 4 more dead languages, but also sorry, but also because of the things you learn about humanity, archaeology, and then everything related to ancient history basically is a study in human interactions from a kind of distance, but you still need to learn why people do things. And people never do things because they are, let's say, easy or the most obvious thing. People do things because they need to survive. And that's very, very important even for my job today. All the sociological aspects, why people behave in a way, and why persons treat other persons in a specific way. That was basically laid out for me in my studies. And yeah, it was also a very good time. I went to Egypt twice. I did not excavate in Egypt because that was kind of clashing with my half year in Australia. And apparently I decided to go to Australia over going to Egypt, which was also a very, very smart move in hindsight, because like learning a language for real is much more important right now than staying 5 to 6 weeks in Egypt and doing some excavation stuff. In the end, I did my master's, I did my PhD, but during my PhD studies, I was, now I would say, lucky to be part of the group that decided on the next head professor for my department. My Dr. Vater, I have no clue what's that in English, the person
PhD
who was taking
father.
care about my PhD thesis, was retiring. And as a PhD student, you are allowed to be part of the committee that is choosing the successor. And honestly, I have never seen a more biased selection process than this one. Not only in terms of diversity and specifically gender diversity, but also in terms of whom are we going to recruit for this role, / we need the weakest person possible in the department to make sure that nobody is challenging our own decisions. And that was the end of my academic career, literally the end, because I decided, hell no, I will not stay at university, and for sure I will not become a professor. So I decided to change, move out of Egyptology and start a proper job, which has had some impediments. First impediment was my dad, who said, if you do not finish your PhD thesis, I will ask for every single euro that I invested in you for those studies. So please, there was no please, you finish your PhD. And then the professor said, Christian, you are so far down the road, so please finish your PhD. So I did that, but still I decided to move out of university. And there, let's say, the disaster of my future career began. So not knowing anything about normal work and the normal economy, I was under the impression that the German word Personalberater is more or less the same as a normal consultant, like strategy consultant. And so I somehow ended up in a recruiting agency because I did not know what they are doing initially. I learned during the interview process, yes, but then it was already too late, and I somehow decided, well, let's give it a try and see what's coming out of that. And here I am. I still work in recruiting, so apparently it was the right decision. And it's the only profession when it comes to professional services where you really have a tangible outcome. And that was the thing that triggered me in the end. A bit similar to you, Jens, I was working as a carpenter for very long years in parallel to my high school years, but also during my studies. And I could have made the exam for being a Geselle, whatever that is in English. Sorry.
Professional carpenter, yeah.
Professional carpenter. I decided against, but still I have had a lot of manual work in my previous life. And working in recruiting gives you an outcome. It's a person, but still it's an outcome that you can touch. It's not only a smart book or some weird ideas that might work or most times probably not. So that was one of the reasons why I also decided to stay in that, or to give it a try at least. And please stop me if I talk too much. Right? I said I will start monologuing at the beginning, and apparently I do.
It's good. I'm double clicking on Egyptology. Define or explain Egyptology for those that have never heard about it, and then link it to recruitment.
That's a good one. Egyptology is an archaeological subject and is part of humanities. So basically you learn everything related to ancient Egypt, and that is archaeology, language, religion, art. That's the big thing. So I used to know everything about the ancient Egyptian gods. I could read hieroglyphs in its three main language steps. I knew probably pretty well the archaeological landscape of Egypt, so excavation and all of that stuff. And for sure you learn history, so which pharaoh is reigned from this year to that year, yada, yada, yada. That was the basis that you learn, and I specifically also focused on the intercultural connections to the Levant and Near East. So today's Israel, Lebanon, Syria, partially Iraq, Iran, and Southeast Anatolia. And that's where I have the connections to sociology as well. So that's Egyptology. It's super interesting, to be very honest. And reading the texts in the original language is even more interesting because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and maybe just to interrupt, sorry for that. When we had, I still remember our last beer when we met in Switzerland. I think we had like an hour conversation about pyramids and Egypt with a group of people that were just interested about this topic, and then it was kind of a live podcast with you around that topics. Because that's something like me coming from a engineering background. It's still super interesting to think about like a pyramid and talking to someone who knows more about that stuff than like me as a basic electrician. It's
well,
super
they did not have electricity there. That
no, I know.
So no power tools, no grinders, nothing. They had to do it manually. But yeah, that's one of the big let's say riddles that are still out there. We still do not really know how they were being built. We have some ideas, some are more probable than the others, but still we do not have 100% proof that our ideas are actually correct. The only thing we know is that there were no slaves, none, and that it was not 20,000 workers working for 20 years, like day for day. That's a myth. That's a myth. It was.
So let's link it back to recruitment.
Yeah. So link it back to recruiting. Here I have to quote my first boss because I did not really remember what I said during one of those interviews at my first company. And Sven told me several times afterwards. So he asked the same question, more or less. He said, why the hell do you want to move from Egyptology to recruiting? And apparently I said, well, basically it's the same. In Egyptology, I search for dead people, and now I have to search for people who are still alive. And that's the connection. So I'm still looking for people. Luckily, they breathe again and are still alive. Now, as I said, it was coincidence because I did not know what that kind of business was doing. And in the end, I decided to give it a try because that's one of my beliefs. If I do something, I usually do not have a plan B because having a plan B means that you do not fully concentrate on the thing you want to do. Because, if it doesn't work, I can do something different. So you are not fully invested. So I'm a very prominent plan A person without any other plans around. Luckily, it worked out. But yeah, that's the reason why I kind of moved to recruiting.
So one of the things that you are very, very detailed into and talk about a lot, and that's what I love about your videos. If anyone that is watching this or listening to this, check out Christian on all social media, but specifically LinkedIn, the videos where he goes really deep. They're all in German, or most of them at least, but really going deep into one topic that you talk quite a bit about is data-driven recruitment. And like a couple of months ago, you did as well a session in one of the communities that I'm curating where you explained the whole thing. And I've never seen someone going so detailed when it comes to recruitment because, I mean, I have worked in very large corporations. I have hired many, many people over the last 15, 20 years. And I can only say from my experience, it was never done with data. That's why I want to learn more about this. So maybe explain a little bit how data-driven recruitment and why data-driven recruitment.
Yeah. So that's the next 60 minutes.
We have time the whole night.
The whole night. My wife will kill me if I don't come back at 9ish. Let's phrase it like that. I was not always into that kind of deep data-driven recruiting approach. Specifically, when I started in recruiting, data was not there. It was not part of the whole show, and basically, you always took a decision based on gut feeling, which most times work. So you do not mishire someone, but you also do not hire the best person possible because gut feeling means you hire a person that is pretty much you in a different hair color probably or whatever. So you're only hiring mini-me's, which does not create a high-performing team. Now I'm at the very end of the whole story again, but I learned it the hard way that all the hires were okay that I did in the past or until a certain point in time, but I never had exceptional talent hired, so to say. That is the one piece. The other piece is moving from an agency to in-house recruiting on the company side, and then moving up the ladder from a normal recruiter to a leadership role. I've somehow found myself not reporting to a CEO, but closely collaborating with the CEO, and then a short way later directly reporting to the CEO. And working for a CEO means gut feeling doesn't count anything. So basically, if you do not have proof for the stuff you're doing, and then proof is numbers, whatever you say does not exist. It's not accepted as a real reason for any decision. And that was then the latest point in time when I kind of found out for myself, if I really want to be successful, and if I really want to find the right person for our openings, I need to focus on data. And data is not only numbers, like whatever, how many candidates do I have in the funnel, conversion rates, but data is also qualitative data out of interviews. What was the answer? How does the answer compare to the job we are recruiting for? So you need to have categories, you need to have a lot of structure in your process to be able to find the most suitable person. I deliberately don't say the best person, because there is no best person. And I also avoid those A player, B player things, because it does not fit into recruiting at all. It's a military term from a completely different way of working and also evaluating people. It has nothing to do in recruiting or human resources anyway. Side story. So I started looking into data. And recruiting is the easiest part of human resources when it comes to data, because you can track a lot of stuff, at least along the process. You can track how long people are in the process. You can track conversion rates, how many people make it from one step to the other. You can track offer acceptance rates and so on. So you already have a lot of data, which can help, but not necessarily must help your recruiting approach. And then I figured out that there is a lot more stuff that you can really make into objective criteria. And objective criteria is what I already mentioned. You need to have the same questions and the same case study for all candidates that you recruit for one specific role. And you also need to have a certain way of writing down your findings. So it needs to be also very structured. And you need to have a quite strict methodology in evaluating interviews. And that enables you to compare candidates. And that's the trick. You do not compare candidates with each other, because that is just that it feeds into your biases if you compare people. But if you have a proper description of your role, if you have had a proper kickoff meeting where you define the complete scope of the role, including what skills do we need, what personality do we need, what are the goals for the first 6 to 12 months, and everything in that area, you have a very good way of evaluating the answers of the candidate towards your perfect role. And then you can decide which candidate is the best candidate for, or the most suitable candidate for that role. If you do that, and if you have a proper kickoff meeting, you can also you have to focus on the team setup, because a brilliant individual might do a good job, but a slightly less brilliant individual that collaborates perfectly with the rest of the team will create something even bigger, because they lift productivity significantly. And you do not have that big hole if one person leaves. You do not have to replace Einstein, but some minor person as not being Einstein, right? So, and that leads to a completely different approach. Plus, and that's also something I learned with the close collaboration with C-level and the CEO. Recruiting needs to own the whole thing. It needs to be fully responsible for the process, for the evaluation, but recruiting is not responsible for the hire. That's very, very important. Hiring is the responsibility of the hiring manager. That person needs to decide who is the best person for his or her team. But recruiting needs to do everything to make that decision super, super easy and objective. And to be able to do that, you need to fully understand the business. You need to understand what that team is doing. You need to understand what the business unit, what the department is doing. And you need to fully understand the purpose and the mission of the company. Because only then do you have the chance to really pick those persons who are aligned the most with the complete set of values, mission, goals that feed into company success. If you don't do that, you're just an administrator. And if you are just an administrator, you will be replaced by AI rather sooner than later, because those folks just do scheduling interviews and some calls back and forth, but they do not bring added value to the whole thing. And as soon as you bring added value, the impact is much bigger. And then back, if you do not have those qualitative data points, numbers data points, you are not able to take a sound decision, and you are not able to predict the future. And that's the beauty of data, right? If you have a lot of data, you can predict a lot of things for similar roles in the future. You can predict how long it's going to take. You can predict salary. You can predict where those people most likely will come from, because you know where to find that specific talent, whether it's in Germany, Netherlands, Bulgaria, India, Japan, who cares, you know. And you can say, you can be of much more help to the hiring managers and to the business, because you know in a way, because you have enough data that is backing your prediction pretty much.
Yeah. One of the things that you do now as a business owner yourself, helping obviously with your company, other companies to do that and structure that and really build that process. What is your experience from other companies that you have helped and worked with when you start? Just my experience coming from bigger corporation, it's not existing.
Yeah.
What is your experience with that?
It depends, but having a really structured approach is pretty rare, unfortunately. Some companies have small bits and pieces that are good in themselves, but they did not connect the dots. So they do not link one piece with the other piece, and they also still stay in their silos. And that's the biggest problem, at least in human resources. It's super siloed. You have payroll, and they just speak with payroll. You have recruiting. We do not speak with anybody else. We have learning and development, comp and bench. So all of those things, they are very, very strongly interconnected. And if I know much more about learning and development, compensation and benefits and everything else, I can do a much better job in attracting candidates, because I know their path. I can say, you start here, that's the next step, that's the next step. Salary will develop in this direction, and I can be of much more help towards everybody. And as a not so small side effect, candidate experience increases significantly, because out of a sudden they have the full bundle of information already in the first conversation, and they can take a much better decision whether they want to join the company or not. So that's a thing that most companies still don't see. And what I also experienced is that the main changes that I bring to companies, they don't cost a thing. It's just a small tweak in the process here, a bit of change of communication there, a bit of an adaptation, and internal trainings and knowledge sharing. Well, that costs time, but you do not have spend a lot of budget on that. And as soon as people realize that, and they say, oh, that actually is super cool. And also when I did a very small one-day workshop in a smaller company to help them kind of improve their recruiting approach. And after half a day, they said, well, that's amazing. I never thought about that. I never thought that my decision is biased if I do not have it properly structured. I did not know that I can be so fast if I do small changes. And the most stunning thing, it's still mind-boggling to me, that people still give interviewers more than one day to fill in their scorecards / evaluation sheets. Because honestly, if you do not write down everything within an hour after the interview, you start forgetting things. Like after 1 hour, basically 40% of the interview are already gone. And then imagine doing 2 interviews per day and wait for 24 hours. You don't know which candidate said what. So if you improve on that, and if you need to force people in a way to immediately do the interview evaluation after the conversation, you increase the quality of your documentation significantly, and out of a sudden you have much better criteria you can base your decision on. So it's small bits and pieces, but in combination they make a lot of sense and really improve your recruiting approach.
Yeah. Do you have statistics on the, let's say, cost saving improvement and or let's say revenue perspective from restructuring that?
I have some hints, bits and pieces. I do not have a real statistic, unfortunately, but you have general numbers. Let's use the easiest example. You do a mishire, and you need that person leaves, or you have to kick out that person due to whatever reasons. Then the costs actually explode because you pay for, you do not generate revenue during the time that person is not there. You have to pay everybody that needs to work double. You need to pay recruiting. If it's a really tricky situation, you might have to pay an agency or some external support, but let's leave that out. And if you take a look at costs, the calculation goes up to 3 times the annual salary of the person you want to hire, specifically in sales. So in sales, if you want to hire someone that costs you 80K, you have 320,000 K of loss or money you actually lose because of that. And that's only the money value. Because you also have to take into consideration a person leaving for whatever reason will create unrest in the team. You need to spread the tasks into the team again, so they have to do more work, which usually results into a lot of stress, burnout, and an increased
sickness rate or churn. People
so
leaving.
People start leaving, so you lose even more money because of one bad hire. And that is the calculation you have to you need to have at the back of your mind if you hire people. And you also need to be aware of the fact that a really structured and proper hiring process will decrease the time that is needed to bring a new hire up to full productivity. So basically, if you hire someone and you need to train that person, you need to onboard that person, and you don't have a proper process in that as well, that might take up to 3 to 6 months. If you have everything settled before, including goals and tasks and everything, basically you the person can start to be productive from day one, not fully, but people can start working on their tasks, on their goals already. So you have a much higher chance of reaching your company goals, shipping product, whatever.
Yeah. So in the end, let's say if you see it just as a business and from a financial perspective, it's a no-brainer implementing a data-driven recruitment process. Yeah. So that one thing is you're saving money. On the other hand, you're not spending money that in worst case you need to throw out of the window, or you would in the end. Plus, you would most probably then as well increase turnover, like you said, like connecting it to the products or sales or whatever. So how to go about that as an organization? What are small things that companies can do to get into that direction?
A lot. That's the fast answer. The not so fast answer is evaluate processes, look into processes, evaluate and analyze what you are doing in recruiting. Most times the process is so unstructured that they need 4 interview rounds and every interviewer is asking the same questions. Yes. Which, well, it's a waste of time, of everybody's time, and the candidate
even run through this process myself.
Yeah, so that's the thing. And my first and most important advice basically always is to really implement a very strong intake kickoff meeting where everybody discusses the role in its entirety, so that everybody is fully aware of whom we are looking for, not what, sorry. And that requires also quite well-trained recruiters because they need to ask a lot of questions, but that can be done very, very easily. It's not a big thing to do that. And it really helps you a lot to speed up things. And also it's corporate. I'm a huge fan of SLAs. Implement a proper service level agreement between recruiting and the business that defines responsibilities, timelines, everything. Because if you have that, you can move forward super fast because it's all agreed on, and you can also be a bit more aggressive in saying, well, we need that answer within that business day. We need the scorecard within that business day. That increases pace, automatically, because you just have your answer fast and you can move forward fast. So that's the first thing. And then it's basically, I was thinking about that earlier this week. It brought me back to my first role I was recruiting for, a Six Sigma specialist for a bank. And I had to learn what Six Sigma is. But in the end, that DMIC process, define, measure, analyze, improve, control, is what you need to do on a regular basis. Do not settle on the status quo. Define a goal, measure, analyze, improve, control your outcome, and then start from scratch again. Maybe not from scratch, but you will always find stuff that's not working properly, and then start with those things and do the whole thing again and again and again. That is an easy thing to do if you're used to it, and it will help you a lot because you will always be ahead of the game, and you will always be faster than your competition if you do that. And being faster than your competition in today's recruiting world means a lot because you find those good folks much faster than the rest.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges that I see, especially with, let's say, entrepreneurs and smaller organizations. They have the possibility to do it faster, but it's not always the case.
Yeah, that's a different story. But it can be solved quite
100%.
easily.
100%. So, I mean, one of the things what I hear from you is, so there's a link to collaboration in a completely different way than you, at least what I have experienced. Yes, there's always somehow talent acquisition, HR involved, but in the end, the process is driven, if I understand that right, by the talent acquisition team, and then everyone else is part of that collaboration.
Yeah. Yeah. So the process owner is talent acquisition. We are in charge of everything related to recruiting. And if it's not happening automatically, we are also in charge to bringing everybody on one table to discuss stuff. To make sure that everybody is on the same plate, that everybody has the same understanding of what we are doing, and that everybody knows why we are doing things. And that's the collaboration piece. And that's also something that needs to be learned. And I was different at the very beginning as well. I did not care what the business is doing on a daily basis, but I learned pretty fast that if I don't understand, I will not bring the right people to the interviews. And time is super valuable right now. And when you recruit for a more senior role, you have leadership interviews, right? And yes, I could plan 10 interviews for them, each lasting 2 hours, or I set it up in a way that they have to do 2 interviews with the kind of best persons in the process, and they can, I am super confident that they want to hire both. So, and out of a sudden, you kind of save them a complete workday that they can spend on other things. So that's the beauty of it on a different level.
So where do you see, getting us to a close with the podcast, where do you see recruitment going and the necessity of recruitment in the future from your experience? And then maybe introduce a little bit as well what you do as a business connected to that.
Where do I see recruiting? That's a good one. Unlike so many other persons in my profession, I see a very strong human factor in recruiting still. AI is a tool that can be used, but only to a certain extent, mainly for automating things and smoothing out kinks in the process. When it comes to defining the role, interviewing, evaluating, AI right now and in the midterm future is not able to do the job properly without biases or without coming to the complete wrong conclusion. On top of that, in Europe, we have the EU AI Act that many people don't like. I'm a huge fan of it because it actually forces us to have a very, very thought of way of working with AI that is human-centered and not tool technology-centered, which is super helpful. And what I am doing, me specifically, is I prepare recruiting organizations to leverage technology as much as possible by creating proper structured processes that are the basis of everything they're doing. And as soon as that is accomplished, I focus on training people, of enabling people to really become that recruiter, TA partner that is on eye level with the business and who can really bring the benefit, the added value that is needed for the company strategy. That is my specific role in my company, and as a whole, we basically do the same for all human resources processes, with a focus on learning and development, compensation and benefits, and performance management, because the three are very strongly interconnected. And if you have that right, you really create a super high performing workforce, and you increase engagement and decrease attrition.
Love that. So Christian, how can people reach out to you, and where can people find you?
The easiest way right now is LinkedIn. So just reach out to me on LinkedIn, connect with me, drop me a message. You can also book an appointment directly out of LinkedIn with me, but please try to make it to at least tell a bit about the subject, because otherwise I just don't know what's happening. But you can reach out to me. We are in the process of redoing our homepage. That will be much better in, let's say, a few weeks. But the best way to reach out to me is via LinkedIn. That's where I'm present the most.
Yeah, and I will put that link as well into the show notes, so anyone that is interested to reach out to Christian, check out the show notes or check him out on LinkedIn. Christian, thank you very much for spending your evening with me. Data-driven recruitment is a fascinating topic, and I think we maybe need to do round 2 in the future, where we go even further deeper into it, and maybe use like a use case or something, because I think there's so much room for improvement in the companies that I've worked that I would love to highlight that even more. Christian, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to speak with you, and sorry for monologuing so much.
That's part of it. It's good.